Welcome to the YouTube channel, Contact Center Knowledge Hub, your one-stop solution for expert guidance, best practices, and actionable knowledge in the world of contact centers. Explore, learn, and enhance contact center skills. Let's see situational most important questions of forecasting method, Delphi. Let's see first situation, data is unreliable or missing. Question 1. How would you use Delphi forecasting when historical data is missing or unreliable? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When historical data is missing or unreliable, Delphi forecasting becomes a primary method, not a backup. In such situations, waiting for clean data is not an option. Forecasting must continue to support business decisions. My approach starts by assembling a cross-functional expert panel, typically including workforce management, operations, quality, client SMEs, and technology teams. This ensures multiple operational realities are represented. Next, I clearly define the forecasting objective. Whether the goal is estimating volume, AHT, staffing, or total workload. Clarity at this stage prevents confusion later. In round 1, each expert provides an independent estimate, along with the reasoning behind their assumptions. This captures raw judgment without bias or influence. I then share an anonymized summary, highlighting ranges, key drivers, and areas of disagreement. Never names or titles. In rounds 2 and 3, experts refine their estimates based on shared insights, and variance progressively reduces as assumptions align. The strength of Delphi in this scenario is simple but powerful. It converts expert experience into structured intelligence. Even without reliable data, Delphi enables informed, defensible decision-making by replacing missing numbers with disciplined judgment. The key takeaway is this: forecasting cannot stop when data fails. Delphi ensures business continuity, protecting planning, staffing, and service outcomes, even in uncertain or data-poor environments. Next situation, experts strongly disagree. Question: what would you do if experts provide widely different forecasts during Delphi rounds? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When experts provide widely different forecasts during Delphi rounds, I don't treat that as a failure. I treat it as a signal. Strong disagreement usually means something important is being revealed, not that the process is broken. First, I quantify the disagreement using objective measures such as range and standard deviation, so we understand how wide the gap really is. Next, I identify the root causes of divergence. This often comes from different assumptions, inconsistent scope definitions, or varying interpretations of customer or operational behavior. Then, I separate facts from judgment. What is supported by evidence, and what is based on expectation or experience. After that, I ask experts to revise their estimates, but only after reviewing peer logic and reasoning, not by anchoring to someone else's numbers. If variance remains high, I deliberately run an additional Delphi round, focused purely on clarifying assumptions and risks. The goal is never forced consensus. The goal is convergence through reasoning. The key insight is this: healthy disagreement improves forecast quality when it is handled systematically. By treating divergence as insight rather than conflict, Delphi produces forecasts that are more accurate, credible, and resilient under uncertainty. Next situation is, senior leader pushes a pre-decided number. Question 3. A senior leader wants Delphi to validate their preferred forecast. How do you handle this? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When a senior leader pushes a pre-decided number and expects Delphi to validate it, my responsibility is to protect the integrity of the method. Delphi only works when it remains independent, unbiased, and evidence-driven. First, I enforce strict expert anonymity. So inputs are insulated from hierarchy, influence, or expectation. Second, I prevent authority bias by applying equal weighting and evaluating inputs based on rationale, not seniority. Third, I document all assumptions transparently, including areas where expert reasoning aligns or diverges. Fourth, I present Delphi outcomes as ranges and risk-based scenarios, not as a single convenient number that confirms a preference. I also clearly show where leadership assumptions diverge from expert consensus, using evidence, variance, and rationale, never opinion. If leadership ultimately chooses to override the Delphi output, I ensure that decision is explicitly documented as a leadership override, not misrepresented as a Delphi result. The reason this is critical is simple. Delphi loses all credibility if it becomes a justification tool instead of a forecasting method. By maintaining ethical boundaries, I ensure Delphi remains a trusted, professional framework that leaders rely on for insight, even when the insights are uncomfortable. Next situation, time is very limited. Question. How do you apply Delphi when there is very little time? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When time is extremely limited, I apply what I call rapid Delphi. The objective is not perfection. It is to deliver a directional, defensible forecast on time. First, I limit the expert panel to 5 to 7 high-impact experts. People closest to the decision drivers, not the widest audience. Second, I run 1 or 2 fast Delphi rounds only, keeping momentum high and avoiding unnecessary iteration. Third, I focus strictly on key drivers, such as expected volume uplift, AHT change, or peak timing, not full end-to-end decomposition. Fourth, I use digital surveys or short, structured calls to capture inputs quickly while preserving independence and anonymity. Finally, I accept wider confidence ranges. Speed comes with uncertainty, and I make that explicit. The guiding principle is this: speed is achieved by reducing scope, not by compromising structure or ethics. The outcome is a directional but defensible forecast, delivered within tight timelines, that still protects decision quality and credibility. Rapid Delphi ensures leaders can act quickly, without guessing blindly. Next situation, new channel or new product launch. Question. How would you forecast demand for a new channel where no historical data exists? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When forecasting demand for a new channel or a new product with no historical data, this becomes a classic Delphi use case. Traditional models struggle here because there are no patterns to learn from. So judgment must lead. I begin with analog forecasting, looking at similar channels, comparable products, or past launches. to establish a realistic reference point. Next, I ask experts to estimate a few critical drivers, not everything. First, the expected adoption rate. How quickly customers are likely to use the new channel. Second, migration behavior. How much demand will shift from existing channels like voice or chat versus how much will be truly incremental. Third, the learning curve impact on AHT. New channels and products almost always start with higher handle times due to customer unfamiliarity and agent ramp-up. I then run Delphi rounds to refine these assumptions, sharing anonymized rationale so experts can adjust based on collective insight. Once assumptions stabilize, I convert them into volume and workload mathematics, translating intuition into staffing and capacity requirements. The key insight is this: Delphi captures market intuition and operational realism that statistical models simply cannot provide in new environments. By using Delphi, I ensure the forecast is not just theoretical, but grounded in how customers and operations will actually behave during a new channel or product launch. Next situation: client versus operations conflict. Question: Client expects high volumes, operations disagree. How do you resolve this using Delphi? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When a client expects high volumes but operations strongly disagree, I use Delphi forecasting to convert conflict into alignment. The first step is to bring both sides into the same Delphi panel, but with full anonymity. This removes hierarchy, ownership bias, and defensiveness from the discussion. In the process, the client team provides their demand expectations, often based on marketing reach, policy intent, or customer base assumptions. The operations team contributes capacity insights and behavioral realities, such as handling complexity, repeat call patterns, AHT sensitivity, and what typically happens on the front line. Through Delphi rounds, these inputs are evaluated side by side, not to decide who is right, but to expose assumption gaps. Some assumptions prove optimistic, others prove overly conservative. What matters is that the logic becomes visible. The final Delphi output is never a forced compromise. It includes a base case representing the most likely consensus, a best case reflecting lower risk outcomes, a worst case capturing downside exposure, clear risk notes explaining what could push volume up or down. This reframes the conversation from who is correct to what does the evidence tell us and how do we prepare. The key insight is this: Delphi doesn't pick sides, it aligns reality. By structuring disagreement into evidence-based scenarios, Delphi restores trust, supports balanced planning, and enables decisions that both the client and operations can stand behind. Next situation: forecast must feed budgeting. Question: How do you translate Delphi outputs into financial forecasts? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When a Delphi forecast must feed directly into budgeting, my role is to translate expert judgment into financial reality. I start by converting expert logic into cost drivers. For example, if Delphi indicates a 12% increase in volume and a 15-second increase in AHT, I don't stop at the percentages. First, I translate those insights into additional workload hours, by applying the volume uplift and HT change to the baseline demand. Next, I convert workload into incremental FTE requirements, accounting for shrinkage, productivity, and operating hours. Then, I translate FTE into cost impact, whether in rupees or dollars, including salary, benefits, overheads, and any overtime or buffer staffing. In this model, Delphi provides the behavioral and operational inputs, while finance converts those inputs into unit economics, such as cost per contact, cost to serve, and total budget impact. The guiding principle is simple and repeatable. Judgment leads to workload. Workload leads to cost. Cost leads to budget. By structuring Delphi outputs this way, I ensure forecasts are not just operationally sound, but also financially actionable, supporting accurate budgeting, approvals, and long-term planning. Next situation, measuring Delphi accuracy. Question: how do you measure whether Delphi forecasting was successful? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. To determine whether Delphi forecasting was successful, I measure more than just a final number. First, I track forecast versus actual variance to understand how close the consensus came to real outcomes. Second, I measure accuracy improvement across Delphi rounds, because shrinking variance and tighter estimates indicate strong convergence and learning. Third, I review the quality of assumptions. Which drivers proved correct, which were overstated, and which risks materialized differently than expected. Fourth, I analyze bias patterns of individual experts over time, identifying who consistently over or underestimates, and adjusting future weighting or probing accordingly. But accuracy alone is not the full measure of success. Delphi is also successful when it delivers times fewer operational surprises, times better preparedness for risk scenarios, times stronger trust among stakeholders and leadership. The key insight is this: a good forecast predicts outcomes. A great Delphi process improves decisions. By evaluating both numerical accuracy and decision quality, I ensure Delphi continuously improves, not just as a forecasting method, but as a strategic decision support framework. Next situation is combining Delphi with statistical models. Question 9. Should Delphi replace statistical forecasting models? Think for a moment. The answer is a clear no. Delphi is not meant to replace models. It is designed to complement them. In high-performing contact centers, we always start with statistical forecasting as the baseline. Models built on historical volumes, trends, and seasonality provide an objective foundation. Then we use the Delphi method to add human intelligence for areas where models struggle. Delphi input is especially valuable for upcoming events, marketing campaigns, policy or pricing changes, and any form of structural or customer behavior change. After that, we carefully blend the statistical output with Delphi insights, applying governance controls and buffers. This hybrid approach gives us the best of both worlds. We create a forecast that is data-driven, because it is anchored to solid historical models, and business-aware, because Delphi adds expert understanding of psychology and real-world drivers. In summary, Delphi should enhance forecasting accuracy by filling the gaps that statistics alone cannot cover. Next situation is governance and ethics. Question 10. How do you ensure ethical use of Delphi forecasting? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. To ensure the ethical use of Delphi forecasting, I apply clear governance controls without exception. First, I enforce strict anonymity. So expert inputs are protected from hierarchy, politics, and pressure. Second, I apply equal weighting of expert inputs, ensuring no opinion carries more influence because of title or authority. Third, I maintain transparent documentation, capturing assumptions, rationale, areas of disagreement, and convergence logic. Fourth, I ensure a clear separation between the forecast and the decision. Delphi provides insight. Leadership makes the decision. These two must never be blurred. Finally, I maintain an audit trail for overrides. So if leadership chooses a different path, it is explicitly recorded as a decision, not misrepresented as a Delphi outcome. The core principle is simple. Ethical Delphi prioritize credibility over convenience. By enforcing these standards, Delphi remains a trustworthy, unbiased decision support method, building long-term confidence with leaders, clients, and auditors, not short-term validation for pre-decided outcomes. Next situation is, forecast accuracy is questioned post-fact. Question 11. Actuals deviated significantly from the Delphi forecast. How do you respond? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When actual results deviate significantly from a Delphi forecast, I do not treat that as failure. I treat it as a learning loop. The first step is to run a forecast versus actual variance analysis to objectively understand the size and direction of the deviation. Next, I identify where the gap came from. This usually falls into one of three categories. First, incorrect assumptions, where expert judgment did not fully capture customer or operational behavior. Second, unforeseen events, such as last-minute campaigns, system issues, regulatory changes, or external shocks that were not knowable during the Delphi cycle. Third, execution gaps, where the forecast was sound, but staffing, routing, training, or process execution did not align with the plan. I then review which expert assumptions held true and which did not, and update the expert credibility scorecard accordingly. Not to penalize, but to improve future calibration. Finally, I feed these insights directly into the next Delphi cycle. So assumptions are refined, blind spots are reduced, and convergence improves over time. The key principle is this. Delphi becomes stronger when learning is institutionalized, not hidden. By treating forecast misses as structured feedback, rather than defensiveness, I ensure Delphi evolves into a continuously improving, credible, and trusted decision support framework. Next situation is, experts are overly optimistic or conservative. Question 12. How do you manage optimism or pessimism bias in Delphi forecasting? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When experts appear overly optimistic or overly conservative in Delphi forecasting, I don't try to correct bias emotionally. I control it structurally. Bias is best managed through process design, not debate. First, I compare expert inputs with historical analogs, not to force alignment with the past, but to flag where assumptions are unusually aggressive or cautious. Second, I require experts to justify drivers, not numbers. Instead of asking, why 30%? I ask, what customer behavior, process change, or risk is driving that estimate? Third, I highlight historical forecast accuracy patterns of experts. Without naming individuals, so the panel becomes aware of systemic optimism or conservatism trends. Fourth, I force range-based estimates instead of single-point forecasts. Ranges naturally surface uncertainty and prevent false precision driven by bias. If skew still persists, I deliberately run additional Delphi rounds, focused only on stress testing assumptions and downside or upside risks. The outcome is not elimination of judgment. It is calibration of judgment. The key insight is this: Delphi does not remove bias by opinion. It converts bias into measurable risk bands. By structuring optimism and pessimism into ranges and scenarios, Delphi produces forecasts that are more realistic, resilient, and decision-ready under uncertainty. Next situation is, too many experts want to participate. Question 13. What if too many stakeholders want to be part of the Delphi panel? Think for a moment. And the answer is here, when too many stakeholders want to participate in a Delphi panel. I apply a clear principle. More experts does not mean a better forecast. Delphi works best when insight quality is high and noise is controlled. I select experts based on 4 criteria. First, decision proximity. How close the expert is to the customer behavior or operational reality being forecasted. Second, historical accuracy. Whether the expert's past judgments have proven reliable over time. Third, domain relevance. Ensuring each expert brings a distinct and necessary perspective, not a duplicated viewpoint. And fourth, independence of thought. Experts who challenge assumptions rather than reinforce groupthink. When too many voices are included, the signal-to-noise ratio drops, convergence slows, and the forecast becomes harder to interpret. The key insight is this: Delphi rewards quality of expertise, not quantity of participants. By keeping the panel focused and intentional, I ensure faster convergence, clearer insights, and a forecast that supports confident, timely decisions. Next situation is external shock like regulatory, system, market. Question 14. How does Delphi help during sudden external shocks? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. During a sudden external shock, whether regulatory, system-related, or market-driven, Delphi becomes especially powerful because statistical models always lag reality. In these moments, speed and judgment matter more than historical precision. My first step is to rapidly assemble subject matter experts closest to the event, typically from operations, technology, compliance, client teams, and workforce management. Next, I run short-cycle Delphi rounds, designed for fast insight rather than perfect convergence. I deliberately focus expert judgment on a few critical dimensions. First, impact duration. How long customer behavior and volume disruption are likely to last. Second, the recovery curve. Whether demand will normalize gradually, spike after resolution, or oscillate. Third, secondary effects, such as repeat calls, AHT inflation, channel migration, or backlog creation. Rather than forcing a single forecast number, I produce scenario-based outputs: best case, likely case, and worst case. with clear risk notes and trigger points. This gives leadership the ability to act immediately, well before data stabilize or models recalibrate. The key insight is this. In external shocks, waiting for clean data is itself a risk. Delphi allows organizations to respond decisively, using expert intelligence to stay ahead of rapidly changing conditions. Next situation is, forecast needs confidence intervals. Question 15. How do you generate confidence ranges using Delphi? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When a forecast needs confidence intervals, Delphi is naturally well suited, because it was designed to express uncertainty, not hide it. I generate confidence ranges in three deliberate ways. First, I ask experts to provide minimum, most likely, and maximum estimates, rather than a single point. This immediately frames uncertainty in a structured way. Second, I analyze the interquartile range, which helps remove outliers and focuses attention on where the majority of expert judgment lies. Third, I track variance reduction across Delphi rounds. As variance tightens, confidence increases. When variance stabilizes, the range becomes decision-ready. The final Delphi output is never just one number. It clearly includes times a base case, the most likely outcome, times upside risk, where demand or impact could exceed expectations, times downside risk, where outcomes could fall short. The guiding principle is this. Decision makers need ranges, not false precision. By presenting confidence intervals instead of single-point forecasts, Delphi supports better risk management, more resilient planning, and smarter leadership decisions under uncertainty. Next situation is expert fatigue across multiple rounds. Question 16. Experts start disengaging after multiple Delphi rounds. What do you do? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When experts begin to disengage after multiple Delphi rounds, I don't push harder. I optimize the process. Expert fatigue is a signal to improve design, not demand more effort. First, I limit the number of rounds using clear convergence criteria, such as variance thresholds or stabilization of assumptions. Delphi should stop when insight plateaus, not when patience runs out. Second, I share progress visibility, showing experts how variance has reduced and how their input is shaping the outcome. Seeing impact restores motivation. Third, I simplify questionnaires, focusing only on unresolved drivers instead of repeating full assessments every round. Fourth, when needed, I rotate experts, bringing in fresh perspectives without overburdening the same contributors. Finally, I clearly communicate the business impact of their input, how their judgment affects staffing, cost, SLA protection, or client decisions. The guiding principle is this. Delphi succeeds when expert time is respected. By optimizing rather than overloading, I sustain high-quality participation, maintain engagement across rounds, and ensure Delphi remains a trusted and effective decision support process over the long term. Next situation is forecast used for SLA commitments. Question 17. How do you ensure Delphi forecasts are safe for SLA commitments? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. The most important rule is this. Never rely on a single Delphi number for SLA planning. Delphi forecasting provides valuable expert input, but it still carries uncertainty. That is why experienced workforce management teams apply several protections. First, we use conservative percentile forecasts rather than simple averages. Planning to a higher, safer percentile reduces the risk of being underprepared. Second, we always add structured buffers to the Delphi output. Buffers are added for factors such as shrinkage, including absences and non-productive time. Operational volatility, where volumes fluctuate unexpectedly. And unknown or unquantified risks. Third, SLA planning should be aligned to the worst credible scenario, not to the average or the most likely case. We staff for the level of demand that is realistically high enough to protect the business. Following this disciplined approach helps prevent missed service levels, unplanned overtime costs, customer dissatisfaction, and loss of client trust. In summary, Delphi forecasts become safe for SLA commitments when they are used with percentile thinking, realistic buffers, and scenario alignment. And that discipline protects both the financial health and reputation of the call center. Next situation is scaling Delphi across multiple accounts. Question 18. How do you standardize Delphi forecasting across large organizations? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When Delphi forecasting needs to scale across multiple accounts or a large organization, the key enabler is governance. Without governance, Delphi stays ad hoc. With governance, it becomes an enterprise capability. First, I establish standard expert selection criteria. So panels are consistently built around relevance, accuracy, and independence, not availability or hierarchy. Second, I define clear convergence thresholds, such as acceptable variance levels or stabilization rules, so teams know when a Delphi cycle is complete and decision-ready. Third, I introduce assumption documentation templates, ensuring every forecast captures drivers, risks, and rationale in a uniform way. This makes insights transferable across accounts and time periods. Fourth, I implement accuracy tracking dashboards, monitoring forecast versus actuals, variance trends, and expert calibration over time. This creates accountability and continuous improvement. Finally, I set clear escalation rules, defining when disagreements stay within the panel and when they must be elevated to leadership for strategic resolution. The strategic outcome is this. Governance turns Delphi from a one-off technique into a repeatable, scalable forecasting discipline. By standardizing structure while preserving expert judgment, I ensure Delphi delivers consistent, credible, and auditable forecasts across teams, clients, and geographies. Next situation is, experts anchor on the first round average. Question 19. After round 1, experts start gravitating toward the initial average instead of independent thinking. How do you prevent anchoring bias in Delphi? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When experts begin to anchor on the first round average, it weakens the Delphi process and turns it into a statistical herd effect. To prevent anchoring bias, I carefully control what information is shared between rounds. First, I do not share the numerical average from round 1. Instead, I share ranges, key themes, and underlying assumptions. This keeps attention on reasoning, not numbers. Second, I highlight the drivers behind both high and low estimates. So experts understand why opinions differ, not where the midpoint sits. Third, when asking for revisions, I instruct experts to respond to logic gaps and assumption weaknesses, not to adjust toward peer estimates. Occasionally, I also request a blind re-estimation, where experts submit revised inputs without seeing any prior figures. This resets independent thinking and breaks anchoring patterns. The principle is simple but critical. Delphi must converge through reasoning, not arithmetic gravity. By managing information flow deliberately, I ensure Delphi remains a judgment-driven, insight-based forecasting method, rather than a passive averaging exercise. Next situation is, leadership needs a single number, not a range. Question 20. Leadership insists on one forecast number, but Delphi outputs a range. What do you do? Think for a moment. And the answer is here. When leadership insists on a single forecast number, but Delphi produces a range, I do not create false precision. Instead, I translate uncertainty into a decision-safe point. First, I clearly explain the risk profile of the Delphi range. What drives the lower bound? What pushes the upper bound? And what assumptions sit behind each scenario? Second, I recommend a single number, but I anchor that recommendation to leadership's stated priorities, such as risk appetite, SLA exposure, and cost sensitivity. For example, if SLA protection is critical, I recommend a number closer to the upper end of the credible range. If cost control is the priority, I may recommend a midpoint with contingency triggers. Most importantly, I explicitly state, this number is a management choice informed by Delphi, not the only valid forecast. This preserves transparency and accountability. The guiding principle is this: forecasts inform decisions. Leadership owns the risk selection. By converting ranges into risk-aware recommendations, not artificial certainty, I ensure decisions are both informed and responsibly owned. Thanks for watching my YouTube channel, Contact Center Knowledge Hub. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights. See you in the next video.